Thank you for joining us. I'm handing over the microphone now to Sam Smith, who works with the Creative Center for the Performing Arts, to introduce our speakers today.
Thank you very much. And welcome to the YMCA Friday Forum. I not only have a chance to maybe introduce some of you to a couple of amazing artists that live and work within our community, but maybe also to welcome you to the Friday Forum for the first time. How many of you are here for the first time at Friday Forum? Okay, a couple people. How many of you here are students at the University of Illinois? How many of you are troublemaking activists in Champaign-Urbana? Almost everybody. This is where all the troublemakers come and hang out at lunch. How many of you are art makers? Art makers. How many of you are art makers? Make art. Okay, all right. And how many of you identify as campus members? How many of you identify as campus members? How about community members? How about both? Fantastic. Okay. All right. So it's my pleasure to introduce Stacey, Robison, and Jason Finkelman. I'm going to read their bios, their very brief bios. Stacey was born. Stacey Robison is an assistant professor of graphic design at the University of Illinois, is a 2019 to 2020 Nasir Jones Hip Hop Fellow at Harvard University's Hutchins Center for African and African American Research. He completed his Master's of Fine Arts at the University of Buffalo. His work discusses ideas of Black utopias as decolonized spaces of peace by considering Black affluent, self-sustaining communities, Black protest movement, and the art that document them. As part of the collaborative team, Black Kirby, with artist John Jennings, he creates graphic novels, gallery exhibits, and lectures that deconstruct the work of artist Jack Kirby to reimagine Black resistance spaces inspired by design, hip hop, religions, the arts, and the sciences. His latest graphic novel, I Am Alfonso Jones, with writer Tony Medina, is available from Lee and Low Books. You have a newer novel, a newer graphic novel than that. This is his old book. His newer book, maybe you'll have a moment to tell you about that. About Jason Finkelman. I don't know if many of you know that they used to call James Brown the hardest working man. I think Jason Finkelman is up for running in that. He is such a busy artist, organizer. Jason Finkelman is Artistic Director of Global Arts Performance Initiatives at Kranick Center for the Performing Arts, and he serves as Program Administrator for the Robert E. Brown Center for World Music and Engagement Program of the School of Music at the University of Illinois. Jason's most recent multifaceted programming initiative is something called the Improvisers Exchange, which features a student performing ensemble along with concerts, workshops, and lectures by guest artists across the genre. Finkelman's professional life as an artist is focused on music improvisation, cross-cultural collaborative projects, and composition for dance. He continually performs with a host of genre-blurring improvisers from Urbana-Champaign, and he leads the ever-evolving ensemble Karoshia, and currently, I looked at Jason for some help, and currently featuring Joyang Saori, Kataoka, and Kavi Naidu. in collaborative work spanning over 23 years with award-winning choreographer Cynthia Oliver. Finkelman's Music for Dance premiered at Brooklyn Academy of Music in Virago, Mandel in 2017 and received the Bessie Award for She May in 2000. Finkelman's work as an arts presenter and performer on campus and in the community was recognized with a 2019 Advocate ACE Award from the Champaign County Arts Council 40 North IA8 West. In 2021, Improvisers Exchange was listed as the best collaborative effort by Smile Politely's music editor, Sean Williams. Please welcome Stacey Robison and Jason Finkelman.
Man, I tell you what, you gotta, we could have spent the whole hour just reading Jason's
I know, I'm
bio.
tired,
Oh, my
I'm tired.
goodness. Start taking a nap after that.
All those
All that
words,
genius.
names, dates.
We'll see if this, okay, good. I think this microphone is working. Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate being part of this program. It's the first time actually being invited to Friday Forum as a speaker. And I'm so glad to be here with my friend Stacey Robison. Just a little background of how we came to be here today. It's all because of this Parable Path CU, which is, maybe I can get a little assistance on going through these websites. Toshi Regan and Bernice Johnson Regan created an opera called Parable of the Sower Opera based on Octavia Butler's work. And as part of this project, there's a lot of community engagement involved. And being with Sam and other members of Credit Center on the engagement team, we kept thinking about different ways of how conversations around Octavia Butler's work and the Parable Opera would manifest organically in the community. Unfortunately, we've had to postpone the presentation of the Cranard Center's production. It's now listed on the website. I thought we might play just this little short Vimeo piece actually as part of like introducing this work. So we're rescheduling it and hopefully we'll have some more information about that soon.
There's a new world coming. Everything gonna be turning over. Everything gonna be turning over. Where you gonna be standing? 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 Where you gonna be
Okay, great. So we were all very, very excited to see this production and to see what had happened as a result of these various collaborations with community members and conversations and book reads and so forth. So we'll see how we have more time now to continue to expand the conversation. But one of the things that I started doing this past week, I went back and started rereading Parable of the Sower, and I've been following this a little bit in the Toshi Regan and Adrienne Marie Brown's podcast, the Octavia's Parables. So I wanted to direct your attention to this too, and they've gone through several books by this point on this podcast. And I listened to the first 3 chapters of Parable of the Sower, and I thought we would start today's conversation with the way that Adrienne Marie Brown and Toshi Regan start their conversation about chapter 1. But I also want to acknowledge that earlier in the semester, or last semester, Stacy moderated a conversation with Adrienne Marie Brown and Toshi Regan, along with John Jennings and Damien Duffy, who are our own community members or former community members who created a graphic novel of Parable of the Sower that just won a Hugo Award, which is just fantastic. So like you can see, there's all these interconnections between all these various worlds. And actually my interconnection with the opera is that when I was in New York City, some of the performers in that opera are artists that I collaborated with back in the day before I moved here in 2000. So I was especially looking forward to that possibility of reconnecting with some of those artists. But anyway, so in this podcast, when they get into chapter 1, Adrienne Marie Brown and Toshi Reagan start with this very first part of the first page of the book, set in 2024. This is one of the things that's so crazy about the projection that Octavia Butler presented us as future possibilities. But 2024, the very beginning, before the first chapter even, says prodigy is, at its essence, adaptability and persistent positive obsession. Without persistence, what remains is an enthusiasm of the moment. Without adaptability, what remains may be channeled into destructive fanaticism. Without positive obsession, there is nothing at all. So Adrienne Marie Brown asked Toshi, what was your positive obsession? And that's what I think it would be nice for us to start our conversation about. Stacy, what is your positive obsession?
At this very moment, so this is interesting, right? At this particular time, if you ask me this question on Monday, my positive obsession will be a very different answer. Right now, I'm tired. My truck broke down. Right? I'm humbled in some very interesting ways of taking public transit and teaching in person and all of these things. Right? So in this, at this very particular moment, my positive obsession is getting through today so that this entire weekend I can turn off my telephone and really dig into my art practice, right? Especially my music and sound practice and my animation practice, right? Because those are the next stages of my art development. And those are the next ways in which I plan to engage community. So in order to get to that space, I actually have to detach from the community in a particular way in order to go get, go rejuvenate, go charge myself, and et cetera. But if you ask me that same question on Monday morning, it may be a totally different answer because I will be recharged. Does that make sense? I'll leave it right there for now.
And thank you. If I were to think about my positive obsession in the way that Stacy framed it, like my daily positive obsession, currently, this afternoon, I have an Improvisers Exchange ensemble class, and we're going to be performing or investigating Apple Box Double, which is an old Pauline Oliveris composition where amplified apple boxes have materials that are scraped and dragged and plucked on top of to make a soundscape out of, to make a composition out of. So I would just say that Pauline Oliveris for the past several weeks has been my positive obsession. She is a modern composer who really influenced my work and the work of so many others in the world with her teaching of deep listening, which is sort of a meditation practice where music is a resultant element of it. It's not necessarily focused on making music, but it's about attention strategies and creation through improvisation and listening strategies. So I would say that my lifelong positive obsession is this investigation of improvised music and collaboration, because
You didn't say lifelong. I feel like I cheated the answer. Maybe I was a little too selfish. I might want to add on to my answer later.
Well, please add on.
No, let me think about that so I can say something profound first.
Well, one of your positive obsessions that was just recognized by Smile Politely as being disruptor of town and gown. And this idea of collaboration is the theme that I think is going to run through today's conversation, because, you know, to be an improviser is about creating something that you not necessarily do alone. And it's something that you create that is something that you wouldn't imagine creating, because the components are always changing, and it's the information and the knowledge that every individual brings to the collective that creates the work. And Stacy, you have such a great history of collaboration in artistic ways that is amazing. So maybe we could go into that a little bit as part of your obsession.
That was my obsession. The history, you mean?
Well,
I can talk a little bit about the history. So, I mean, we talked about, for those of you who don't know, I collaborate with my best friend, collaborator, mentor, I still call him my mentor, John Jennings, who is a former alum and professor here at U of I. I collaborate in the community with a really awesome local poet and community activist, Shea Robison, and helping her realize her children's book idea, which is pretty much a deep dive into herself as a young girl, looking into ancestry, finding her ancestry and her self-esteem through journaling. And I collaborate with Kamal Grantham. Kamal Grantham was a clinical psychologist and amazing DJ. I call him one of my DJ mentors as well. And we have so many interesting overlaps, like they're countless in some ways. And I'm even starting to collaborate with, many of you may know Kofi Bazell Smith. Where's Sam Smith? Sam Smith's son, the son that I stole. I like to say that I stole his son after he did all the hard work with Kofi's mom in raising him. I came in and took all the accolades and all the awesomeness, and I claim him as my own son. He's a grad student right now studying with us in our MFA program. So we're figuring out what our collaboration is. And but collaboration is a positive obsession, because I'm really thinking about what my legacy is at this particular moment, right? So I'll be 50 in March, right? So I'm looking at my life in a very different way, being a half a century old, and I'm thinking, what do I want my legacy to be? Well, it's a different thing when you realize you cannot take all of these things that you gained with you, right? Like, Harvard won't mean anything in the afterlife. I don't think so, right? It's not like I could take those accolades with me into the next world and get props, you know what I mean? I can't take Smithsonian with me, right? But what I can take with me, well, no, I can't even say what I can take with me, but what I can leave here is the investment that I make into the generation of tomorrow, right? And that is how I'm thinking about that. So collaboration means a very particular thing, and it is a very positive obsession with me at this particular moment, because I'm really thinking about how I'm thinking about, as the Y, as I'm on the board of the Y here, we're thinking about the next 7 generations going into the future, right? Now, that's a massive way of thinking about the next maybe 150 years or something like that. If I'm thinking about my legacy as a positive obsession, then what does that look like 150 years from now? Who will I touch? And the people that I touch may not even know my work, care about my work, or even connect with my work. I don't even know if I care about that, but I do care that I am a very particular powerful seed that is planted in the earth right here and right now that will change tomorrow, right? And that's really what I'm obsessed with right now. All right. I think that was a better answer than my first answer.
That was awesome.
Was it? Was that better?
All
right. Give some hand claps. All right.
And let me just share what that just brought up in my memory, because, you know, I think about legacies and lineages of music and so forth. And I spent a lot of my formative years in Ulster County, because when I met Pauline Oliveris outside of Philadelphia at an artist residency at Yellow Springs Institute, not only did she surprise me by an answer when I introduced her So I play Binimbao, which is used in capoeira. We were invited to this residency because we had a local capoeira group, which is an Afro-Brazilian martial art that was disguised as a dance and is a form of liberation, self-determined liberation movement in itself, right? So we were part of this Njinga, the Queen King residency that Pauline and Ione had at Yellow Springs Institute. They invited us to come all week and be part of the whole residency because we had this capoeira group in Philadelphia. But the next day I came up to her and I said, you know, this is what I do. I'm an improviser and I play African and Brazilian percussion and I work with somebody who plays a bukla music easel. And her response was, oh, I was there when he invented it. So, you know, that was a really unexpected response from Pauline. But then she went on to say, no, really, we were at the Tate Media Center upstairs and he was downstairs creating instruments and we commissioned him to make an instrument. So she was the third person that day, you know, who said, well, if you're interested in jazz and you're interested in what we're doing, maybe you could come to Ulster County and go to SUNY New Paltz and finish school there. And she happened to be the third person to do that. So I followed that sign. I went there. And then the point, though, is that there's this other entity that you just made me think of that existed in that area called the Creative Music Studio in Woodstock, New York, that Carl Berger and Ingrid Sertso had started with people like Don Cherry and other icons of world jazz. And although I never had the opportunity to participate in what is now a renewed and active organization under new leadership with the blessing of Carl Berger, the last time I saw Carl Berger before the pandemic, I took a trip back to Ulster County and I was hanging out with another mentor of mine, Steve Gorn, who is a Bonsuri flautist. And I found myself in the company of Ingrid and Carl, and I really wanted to take that opportunity to thank them. I wanted to thank them for the work that they had done creating a network of musicians. And through that extended network of musicians, I feel that I was part of the Creative Music Studio back in the day, because these were the people I was performing with and being mentored by. And then it moves forward to here. So Pauline's no longer with us. My teacher, Adi Mukumba, is no longer with us. He died this past year. And you start thinking about these legacies of the influences and the people in your life and what they leave behind, you know? And they leave behind stories and experiences within us that we then share through our teaching and the work we do with our students. So thank you for that memory. So should I move on to this? Should we talk about art collaboration? So we're going to tap back into this whole idea of like the parable path. And the Cranard Center asked Stacy to make a piece of artwork that could signify the activities. That became a little bookmark. I'm sorry I don't have enough here to pass out to everybody, but they're at Cranard Center. I don't know if there are some here. There might be a few. Okay, well.
But they are at the Urbana Free Library.
They're at the Urbana Free Library. So, you know, on the back of this, it just reads, Parable Path CU events and activities explore the themes of Octavia E. Butler's Parable of the Sower, and gives a biography of her. And then it concludes by saying, Parable Path CU is a joint project between Cranard Center and several Champaign-Urbana collaborators. So anyway, this image was living here. Is it still here?
It's still here.
So this image is
Lounge.
still here in the lounge. So after our talk, you can go and see this image. But Stacy shared with me this process video. Do you want to talk a little bit about the video itself? Or should we watch it first? And then
I think we
talk
should
about
watch it first.
it? All right, so we'll play it right now and then we'll comment on it after. Do I just press? Okay, thanks.
I lied.
There should be audio. need to turn off.
There's some really awesome audio that goes with this as well.
Oh, maybe this is the wrong version. Maybe this is without the audio.
I don't know. But peep that drawing, y'all. So if you can't hear the audio, I'll just talk through the process.
No, this actually might be the one
Okay.
without the audio.
So I'm not going to talk through the process.
I don't think it has audio.
Or I am going to talk through the process. Or am I not talking through the process?
Good, you could.
All right, cool. All right, so here's the thing. I love talking through process because I totally want you to steal my process. Don't steal my ideas, but steal my process, right? So I'm drawing on the iPad Pro. I have it with me today. I'll be happy to show you what that looks like and how I draw on that. And this was an improvisation. And how many of you have not read Parable of the Sower? Okay, I'm not going to give it away. All right, but I will say though, this is representative of a community that is emerging from the fire that is our COVID era, right? And then what does this community emerge into, right? What is the environment, the world that will exist after this time? Well, when we think about community and the future of community, sometimes we use language like somebody ought to do something about this particular thing, right? I wish somebody would finally deal with such and such. I believe that the community that we want, that somebody who ought to do something about this particular thing is actually us, right here and right now. The community that we want tomorrow has to be built today, right? And we may be building a community, a world that we might not see. So if I can think about what Dr. King said when he thought about the future, and he said, I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you. He was thinking about a world that would emerge after his passing. I believe that the world that we want to see, we have to build for a future generation. Does that make sense? That's at least my thinking, right? So this is an abstraction of a community, and you really have to spend time with this piece. And I'm glad that it's on, I want to say it is on permanent exhibition in the Clark Lounge. All right, that's awesome. So you can come and see this at any time. What I want you to do, and there's an adjacent piece on the maroon wall in there that is a free, a hand drawing, a freestyle drawing that also kind of reinforces the idea of community. What I want you to do in both these pieces is count the figures, count the faces. You have to spend time with the piece, right, in order to find the community inside of it. This is important. Because when you spend time with the community, you get to know the community, right? This is something I'm slightly being humbled with right now and having to really rely on public transit, right? It's not like I'm traveling the entire city, but I actually thinking about that. I was like, I actually could jump on a bus, then transfer to another bus, then transfer to another bus, and then transfer to another bus and really get to know the community a little bit more. Right. So this piece kind of looks at that and thinks about this. But this is when you'll see at the end of this, you'll see that the abstraction of a community that is emerging from a time that is now. Now, you'll also see acorns. Acorns are also another representation in the book. And I'm not going to give that away, but I believe that those acorns are around us right here and right now. Does that make sense, y'all? Okay, cool. I hope I didn't give too much away, but I hope I gave you enough to be interested in if you view the piece in the Clark Lounge. And like I said, I drew this on the iPad Pro using a program called Procreate. That's fair enough?
Yeah.
Okay. You could talk about the next part, right?
Well, I found the actual part that I had meant to be presenting. Sorry about that. So when Stacy sent this file to me, I thought, we've been talking a long time about how can we collaborate with sound and visual, with drawing and showing process and so forth. And so we're in the process of initiating that collaboration. But this opportunity of having this video was sort of a chance to create a proof of concept. So I had just done a performance with Kuroshio with the ensemble membership that you heard in the introduction, and I just thought, let me see. I was using some other music of my own, and then I just thought, well, let me see if I could put some of this music into this video and see how it works. And sort of just selected a track and dropped it in, and then nudged it a little and said, oh man, this looks really, it sounds really great together. So we presented that at a Cranart presentation, and it was really remarkable to hear and see the two together. So I do have it here. I could play some of the audio,
And I'm wondering
but I don't know if we could. Yeah, but I don't know. Is there an audio cable that would fit? That might change everything, right? It's okay. Well, you'll have to use your imagination for that.
Well, we could play it again. I don't think I want to say the studio audience will hear it, but not the home audience, right? They may not hear the audio. Play it.
Okay, we'll see what happens.
Let me know when you're ready to hit play. I can do that. I can at least hit play.
This is really so funny. This is so old school and improvising.
This is improvisation, y'all. All right, we ready? Improvisation.
All right, go ahead.
All right. So I'm freestyling this drawing. I have no idea what it's going to look like at the end, where I'm going to add faces and figures. I'm using some kind of ambiguous colors. I'm not really sure. I did know that, I'm like, these are acorns in here, so I may want to choose some fall colors, right? And it also, in a particular way, represents this pivotal part of the book. And it was fall when I created it, right? So I kind of wanted to mark that time as well. So I'm obviously inspired very much by graffiti, right? And I put that into the work as well. So thus the arrows. You see a lot of profiles, which are also inspired by one of my favorite artists, Ernie Barnes. How many of you know who Ernie Barnes is? Not enough of you. Look up the artist Ernie Barnes. I promise you, many of you who are of a certain age will recognize his work. I'm also inspired by comic books. So you will definitely, do you see the comic book influence in this work? Yeah, I love comic books. I grew up on them, absolutely. But I think that collaboration and improvisation, I feel like collaboration is an improvisation. And I feel like building the community that we want to see in the future is a collaboration and an improvisation. I don't have all the answers. I like to think sometimes that I do, right? But I don't. This is where collaboration comes in, and it becomes very, very important. It takes the multitude of us to build the community that we want to see. I would encourage all of you to lean into your artistic practice, whatever that is. If you do not know what that is, I encourage you to find that and lean into it and explore it and exhaust it. That was kind of dope, right? That was a quotable. Oh, y'all didn't know, I got them bars too. Listen, I got a hot 16 for y'all too. No, I'm joking, I do not. Shouts out to Kuroshio.
Yeah, this is just winding down now. So I just sorry that we have to present it in this kind of way, but I got credits running on this side. We just have a few more minutes before we should take some questions, but I just want to, I opened up with the preface, if you will, of chapter 1, and then chapter 1 starts with this. All that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. Earth, seed, the book, books of the living. So that sets us up to like this book within a book, and with all these proverbs and thoughts from a young woman who's the principal protagonist in Parable of the Sower. And I hope that what we've shared today in brief touched you in some way, and that I think Stacy and I have experienced many moments through our lives that the people who touched us changed us forever. We hope that we've changed them in some way, and we hope that you walk away today changed in some way as well. So with that, I'd like to ask if you have any questions for us.
Yeah, and it looks like the chat was on fire too.
Uh-oh.
I'm always scared of the chat.
I was gonna say, the chat might also be yelling at me for forgetting to unmute. Yes, but we do have this question.
So let me read the questions for those who may not see it. Have you considered working with the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District and youth in the community for art and art projects to be featured in the Yards Illinois Terminal expansion underway? I will answer that, yes. Yes, absolutely. So I am thinking about all of that. Some of the collaborations I have been fulfilled. I've worked with some young people in the community, definitely, but working with MTD is another project that is definitely something that is on my radar. It could be interesting to see what we could do together as a kind of exploratory practice. That could be interesting. We should talk about that.
There's another question, I think, for the organizers here. Will the event be rebroadcast anywhere?
It'll be on the Live's website, and it will also be rebroadcast by back on television.
Oh, yes, it will be. It will be on the WISE website and it will be on Urbana Public Television.
Other questions from the folks that are here? There's this Parenti question, yes.
How would you conduct transformation? How would you conduct a transformation between performance and violence?
Between performance and violence.
Are you using performance to respond to violence?
That could be one way.
Okay.
But just violence is on my mind.
Yeah.
Performance and violence, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the first immediate thing that comes to mind that I always think about when I'm working with people for the first time, you know, I think a lot about sound memory, and I think about sound memories of the memory of violence, the sounds of violence. And I'm not really sure I understand how to navigate that personally, you know. There have only been a few places in my life where I've lived where I've heard the sounds of gunfire like on a regular basis in West Philly when I lived out there. But I admit I've had a privileged lifestyle and I've grew up secure in places where there wasn't a lot of violence and there wasn't personal violence in my life. So, but when I used to go to schools and work with young audiences and talk about, you know, think about sounds like that started resonating with me. And I started wondering how to negotiate that. I think it's an interesting prospect to work through those types of, you know, memories through sound as well as other ways, you know. So maybe that would be one particular journey that I would like to investigate.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that as well. So I do work with some young boys at Centennial High School, not as often as I would like. And I'm in contact with Urbana High School who do a lot of that same work. I'm working on, this is interesting because I read there was so much violence over the summer, a lot of murders over the summer, right? And it affected me in such a way where I started working on a series specifically around celebrating Black boys. And I'm not sure necessarily what to do with that project. It is improvisational, it is visual, it is animated, it is a number of different things that I feel like the work is ahead of me. And I'm trying to catch up to find out what I want this project to be and how to make it connect. And when you think about it, because I don't know if you can, let me just speak for myself. I can't help but think about violence, right? And then how I've been able to escape it. As Jason said, I also live a very privileged lifestyle. Harvard and Smithsonian are my, seriously, you know what I mean? Like I'm at U of I, seriously, right? But that doesn't make me, one, it doesn't make me immune. And it actually makes me feel in a particular way more responsible to respond, right? Like one of the things I started saying to myself is what is my responsibility to the community, but what is my response ability, right? What is my ability to respond? And since I came back here to this community in the summer of 2020, that has been a haunting question. I don't have any very clear answers because it's a massive problem that is systemic, right? And primarily I'm a visual artist, right? How do I deal with this? How do I solve this? I don't know if I can, quote, solve it, but it's something that is constantly on my radar. If it's not on my radar, the news constantly reminds me. right? So I'm still exploring those things too, but that's a great question.
Yeah, and I'd like to expand on that too, because I was just also thinking about the reason why I put Kuroshio together is because I wanted to amplify the stories of Asian musicians. And the histories of Asian people are fraught with violence. And, you know, my question to myself as an improviser of experimental music and creator of experimental music is how does that platform reflect the telling of story? And there have been a different forays into doing that in the medium. But it also could just be for the musicians themselves. Like I know that we have an upcoming performance next week at the Art Museum, and February 19th is the anniversary of the signing of Executive Order 9066, which allowed for the incarceration of Japanese Americans in World War II, which is my personal history. My family went through that experience, and the war years spent incarcerated in what is known as internment camps historically, but is now referred to as incarceration centers mainly. But I also, having worked in Asian studies with the Center for East Asian Pacific Studies over the years, and learning more and more about these histories of violence and war and conflict that continue through today. Displaced people, the struggle to get to somewhere safe, and all these journeys. And so I sort of am wondering when or if the stories of the other members might manifest. And even if they just share, if it's just for themselves, that's enough. But if they share with us and we share with a wider audience, that is another way of expressing healing or a journey through these difficult histories and situations. So just wanted to add that.
Great question.
That's a great question.
Answer the question. Are there other questions, comments? Don't be afraid.
Oh, okay. It would be nice, oh, let me see. Let me pull that up. Wait, am I
So
done?
while he's pulling that up, one of the authors that Jason mentioned, who collaborated with Coach.
Let me see. It might be in the chat.
Is a woman, Adrienne Marie Brown, and she has a book called Emergent Strategies. And I think part of what that book addresses is not only how do we get to the kinds of communities that we want, but also how do we become the kind of people that we need to be in order to build and to live in those communities. And I think, listening to Jason and Stacy, that there's something in particular that designers and artistic collaborators bring that help, that can be a model for how we might, like, we use this word collaborate all the time. And I've worked in enough social service agencies to know that that's a questionable word, right? But what does that mean when we start thinking about partnering and collaborating and living together? I think there's something in artistic work, in art making, and crossing genres that might have lessons. And you've been doing this for a very long time. Are there other people that do some kind of art making or artwork that is focused on building community, building collaboration, building partnership? I see all of the various graphic design teachers, and he's done something. Are there other people here that have done that kind of work? Emily Robison here is from Craft Center, and on Saturday, February 19th, the Craft is presenting a dance piece by the Spectrum Dance Group, which is called Strange Fruit, which is a piece about lynching in America. And so Jason's reference to sound and revisiting sound, and which is what the trauma specialists say is a part of the healing processes. You revisit trauma, you revisit events piece by piece, right? So we're going to be doing some work around health and healing from historic trauma. So you can please come to that performance, that production. Do you want to do that next time?
Yeah, so one of the comments here, it would be great to see, I'm sorry, that was, okay. It would be nice to see this curated with notes as to dates and events mentioned and an outline. I think that is putting some writing together behind. This is what Jason and I are doing is so brand new. We're still figuring it out, but it would have to be documented. I think there's so much history connected to what we're doing, even in its very early stages, that we really need to do some writing and some documentation. Like the documentation is the history, right? So I think that's a great idea. Oh, I'm sorry. And then there were some comments that your comments weren't heard as well.
Jason, I think that, if we preference the questions and folks that are in the room, that would be.
Okay.
That we can respond to this.
Okay, awesome. So,
Yep, yep.
all right, so
Are there other questions here? Why?
so those of you in the chat, we will respond to those questions later.
Yeah, as soon as you know,
But that's okay. If you come up with questions later, we're here, right? That's the thing about being in the community and being active in the community and being present in the community and being tangible in the community, right? You can find us, you know, we're here.
Well, please join me in thanking Professor Stacey.